Hei Hei was responsible for some of the biggest laughs throughout Moana, but for a while, it seemed like that was his only reason for being in the movie. However, after browsing through fan theories on Reddit, someone has brought up a good point, and it looks like there might be more to Hei Hei than fans initially believed. In fact, if this theory ends up being true, Hei Hei might have been Moana's biggest protector, and the reason that she was able to survive her journey to return the heart. Before she teamed up with Maui, Moana only had speechless companions with her on her journey. But according to a fan theory on Reddit, one of those companions had been looking after Moana her entire life. Hei Hei stood by Moana's side from the very beginning of the movie, and there might have been a good reason for that. Sure, he wasn't noticeably helpful during her trip, and honestly in the movie it sort of seemed like he was there simply for comedic relief. But according to this theory, the rooster was sent by the gods to help Moana. He was supposed to act as her guardian and guide her along on her journey to return the heart. And while the idea that Hei Hei was created specifically to help Moana seemed a bit far-fetched at first, there is actually a lot of supporting evidence in Moana, and Disney movies in general, that definitely make it possible. Looking at Disney's track record with animal companions, you might be surprised at how many of them were chosen by a god, gods, or even a character's ancestors to help them fulfill their destiny. And if they were granted guardian status by these ethereal beings, then there is no reason why Hei Hei wouldn't have been. As of right now, out of all of the official Disney princesses, the only 3 that didn't have specific animal companions were Snow White, Belle, and Aurora, though they were constantly surrounded by random forest animals and talking furniture, so even that is a bit of a stretch. But specifically in the cases of Mulan and Ariel, their companions were placed in their life specifically to help guide them and to make sure they were safe. Mulan had Mushu, who was ordered by the Fa ancestors to bring Mulan back to her family safely. Granted, he sort of gave himself the job after he literally broke the Great Stone Dragon, but that wasn't the only protection job that he was given. Mushu's original guardian job came generations before Mulan, when he was charged with protecting Fa Dang, which ended in failure. But that doesn't mean that Mushu wasn't chosen to be a guardian, much like this theory believes Hei Hei was to Moana. As for Ariel, her animal companion was literally bestowed onto her by a god, or at least a demigod. Sebastian wasn't only a talking crab who could groove like no other, but he was specifically placed in Ariel's life by her father Triton, who was revealed in the Broadway play to be the son of the god Poseidon. And according to Sebastian himself, he was ordered by Triton to take care of Ariel and to look after her. He was literally a guardian appointed by the gods. And honestly, the same argument could be made for a lot of the anthropomorphized animal companions in Disney. From Pascal the chameleon to Ray the firefly, they all had very spiritual and guardian vibes to them, and there's no real reason that Hei Hei would be any different from them. The rooster had been there to protect Moana since the very beginning, which in itself sort of adds to the idea that Hei Hei was sent by the gods to be Moana's guardian. You see, the Redditor who came up with this theory pointed out that despite him being around Moana since she was a baby, Hei Hei didn't appear to age at all in the movie. And that's weird for a chicken, and might honestly imply that there was a supernatural force at work that kept Hei Hei around to protect and guide Moana on her mission to return the heart safely to Te Fiti. Now, most people have a hard time distinguishing whether or not a chicken, or in this case a rooster, looks old or not. That's because there's not really a noticeable difference aside from the fact that older chickens tend to have thicker feet and legs than their younger counterparts. But again, that's super hard to distinguish, so you might think that it would be impossible to determine whether Hei Hei was aging or not. That's not the case though, and after looking into it, it turns out that Hei Hei did defy the laws of nature in Moana, with his agelessness, which could support the idea that he was Moana's god-appointed guardian. You see, as far as Hei Hei in Moana was concerned, if he aged properly, he would have been dead by the time Moana finally left the island to return the heart. You see, the average lifespan of a chicken is between 5 and 10 years, and that's under prime circumstances. On an island where there are countless threats around him, Hei Hei would have been lucky to survive a few years before he inevitably bit the dust. But as you can see from the movie, that didn't happen, and despite Moana having Hei Hei for more than 15 years, since she was 16 by the end of the movie, the rooster was like the Bee Gees, staying alive. So based on the fact that in Moana, Hei Hei seemed to be immortal, it's easy to see where this fan theory is coming from. And the idea that the rooster was chosen by the gods to be Moana's guardian seems like it could hold up. Even without Hei Hei's agelessness as a part of this discussion, the rooster defied death numerous times, which could once again hint towards his role as Moana's supernatural guardian. First off, it's important to note that judging by the way Disney portrayed Hei Hei in the movie, he would not have survived on his own. Hei Hei was such an unintelligent rooster that he wasn't even able to feed himself, which surely would have resulted in him starving to death, unless he was a spiritual guardian of Moana, which would imply that Hei Hei didn't have to eat in order to survive. And that would explain the fact that he didn't seem to have any instincts that told him he needed to eat, or what was edible for that matter. In one scene towards the beginning of the movie, the rooster was shown trying trying to eat a rock, and then when he couldn't swallow it, not only did he spit it back up, but he continued pecking at it, as if he couldn't tell that it wasn't food. While that could imply something as simple as how truly stupid Hei Hei was, it could also be explained by the idea of the rooster simply not needing to eat to survive, because his entire purpose was to protect and guide Moana. Starvation wasn't the only threat to Hei Hei though. In the movie, Disney also showed that if Moana wasn't around, the villagers would have tried to cook and eat him. One of the villagers outright asked Moana why they hadn't yet, as he pointed out that Hei Hei lacked the basic intelligence required for pretty much everything. And it's funny, Moana actually replied by saying that she's sure there's more to Hei Hei than meets the eye. And if this theory were true, and he was her spiritual guardian, she would have been spot on. Another prime example of Hei Hei's possible immortality was when he was on the boat with Moana after she had just left the island. All in a matter of 2 minutes on screen, Hei Hei put himself and Moana in life-threatening situations, like when he walked off the side of her boat and should have drowned. Moana jumped into the water to save the rooster without realizing that she had left the sail up, and by the time she grabbed hold of Hei Hei, her boat began to sail away from her. Now there is no way that she would have been able to catch up to her boat with the rooster in one hand unless there was some sort of intervention. Who knows? Perhaps Hei Hei protected both of them from drowning and somehow kept their boat from sailing away as part of his role as Moana's guardian. Let's face it, if Hei Hei was tasked with guiding Moana towards her destiny, it would certainly explain his ability to survive the most harrowing of situations. Now, the next thing that's important to consider for this theory would be why the gods would grant Moana a guardian in the first place, and why they would choose Hei Hei of all animals. Well, it stands within reason that Moana was chosen by the ocean gods, or spirits, to return the heart to Te Fiti. Though it's not exactly confirmed in the movie, the ocean revealed itself to Moana at the beginning of the movie for a reason, and even gave her the heart personally. That might imply that she was the chosen one, and much like every chosen one in cinema history, she needed a companion to act as a sort of guide to get Moana where she needed to be. Well, according to this theory, that guide was Hei Hei, which would explain why he had been around since she was just a baby. The rooster may have protected Moana as she grew up on the island, and that's why he stayed by her side every step of the way. Plus, if Hei Hei was Moana's guardian, who was supposed to take her to Te Fiti, that could be why she almost died when she crossed the reef without him. When it was only Moana and Pua, the pig, their boat quickly capsized, and she was almost killed. But the second time she crossed, she had her proper guide, Hei Hei, with her, and his presence protected the boat during that first portion of their journey. As for why the gods would have chosen a creature as unintelligent as Hei Hei in the first place, well, as Moana said at the beginning of the movie, intelligence isn't everything. She said, sometimes our strengths lie beneath the surface, specifically referring to Hei Hei. And according to the Redditor who came up with the theory, the rooster was judged to be worthy based on his heart and not how smart he was. But what do you think? Was there actually more to Hei Hei than what Disney led us to believe? Or was he really just a goofy companion placed in the movie solely for comedic relief? Make sure you let us know in the comments down below.